We can we'll gear this towards people who have a basic understanding, and we'll have the experts chime in too as things come up. Great, great. So to introduce who we have here, all our lovely faces, I want to do a quick introduction. We have at the top there's Dan. He is our certified emotional intelligence analyst here at with Careertopia and Balanced Work Life. He's come with an extensive background at IBM. He worked in over across a number of different countries, and he's been coaching executives. So he has a lot of expertise to bring into this.
And Bryce, our editor-in-chief, he's very humble when he indicates that he's an apprentice. He's a very quick study and a very quick learner, and he writes our blogs and writes to those publications that are indicated there, and a very, very important member of our team.
Awesome. And Michelle there, she's been a very helpful part of my team on Careertopia. You've probably read her articles. Go ahead and write yes if you've read about us on Careertopia or seen something there. I just want to see how many people are familiar with our website on that end and how many people are coming from other places as well. Yeah, cool. Very good. So she's the one who does a lot of the editing and writing the articles for Careertopia. She helps out on the marketing, and she's very educated on emotional intelligence and probably the best at demonstrating it here in the office. She's very good at being self-aware, and she really helps us stay on our toes. So that's who you'll be hearing from today. And I just want to, here's the agenda that we'll be going over. So we're going to talk about emotional intelligence and what it looks like. Then we'll dive into the 5 areas or elements of emotional intelligence. Then we'll talk about how it affects you, which is going to be a big, important part of how this can impact your career. And then we'll continue from there with how to improve on your emotional intelligence, and then show you how to measure it and next steps if this is something you want to keep working on. So to get a feeling from you, I wanted to see, what does emotional intelligence look like? Some of the what do you all think about when you hear emotional intelligence? I want to start with some examples, but I want to also hear some of yours if there's anything that resonates with you. Um, and one of the first things I want to talk about is that emotional intelligence isn't just anger management. That's probably something that comes to mind most often is you see those people who blow up on television or lose it in a boardroom or whatever, and you think, okay, that person has no emotional intelligence, and that's all it is. But there's a lot more to it, and we're going to go through that on this webinar as well. Yeah, and I like what you guys are typing in there. Luis said, someone who seems self-aware and stays balanced. Perfect. The ability to read others' unspoken language. Yes, that is huge in there. Delay of gratification. Yeah, the marshmallow experience. That's a huge emotional intelligence example there. So very good. Good answers. When you registered, you also probably saw a similar question come up, and a lot of you shared some really cool little stories there. So I just want to share a few of those here. Luis, you've seen her type in already. She shared a great example, and this is one I've heard from a lot of people too, where they just have one of those faces that can come off as them feeling it might look like they are uninterested or maybe annoyed or whatever, but it's just their relaxed look. That's how it comes off. So she put a very good story here about how she has to be aware of it and consciously change her expression so that people aren't intimidated or hurt by it. And then this was another good example Bill shared that he overheard someone saying. But how many times have you heard a boss kind of respond in a similar way? I don't need to pat them on the back. They're big boys and girls. They know what they're doing when they're doing a good job. So just goes to show these are some examples there. What I want to do next here is actually show you some videos that demonstrate this. So you're going to see this one come up here. And how many of you are sports fans? Type yes if you're a sports fan in the chat. because this will probably be immediately familiar to you. Good, good. We have a few of you there. All right, so to set this video up, this is Richard Sherman after the game where where the Seattle Seahawks were going to go into the Super Bowl. So they just won, really high on emotions, really excited, and let's see how he handles his response.
Well, I'm the best one in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're gonna get. Don't you ever talk about me.
Who was talking about you?
Crabtree, don't you open your mouth about the best. Or I'm gonna set it for you real quick. LOB.
All right, and Joe, back over to you.
Cool. So how did he probably respond to his emotions there? Go ahead and tell me what you felt about that, because I'm going to show the next clip's going to set it up another look at this kind of thing. Anger. Yeah. Yeah, so how do you think he handled his response there? What kind of reaction did he have to his emotions? Very aggressive, yeah. Not so great. Not a lot of self-control, exactly. Really good. And Danny, I want you to kind of talk about this next example we're going to show here while I set it up.
Okay, I'm Canadian, and growing up in Canada, there isn't really anything that a Canadian boy wants to grow up to do is to win the Hockey Stanley Cup. So the next clip is a little bit of a contrast to Richard Sherman, where we have Sidney Crosby being interviewed after he won his first Stanley Cup.
Yeah. So as you watch this, compare how his reaction was to Richard Sherman's.
That's the guys, that's Ray, it's ownership, it's everyone involved sharing the same goal. You know, it starts from the top, it's always like that. Guys had to buy into the system, and we got a new coach, we're in 10th place, so it starts from the top and filters all the way down. So I think that's where it comes from. They had a plan, they stuck to it, and we found a way.
So despite the bedlam around him and the fact that he's just won the most important prize, you can see how he manages his emotions.
Yeah, what was the difference between his emotions or his response to his emotions and Richard Sherman's? Go ahead and share some of your examples in the chat too, because this is a great discussion. This is going to help you as you look at your own emotions and how you react to get an understanding there. But
I love Trisha's response.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as PR coach.
Commercial endorsements, yeah. The team player, that was a big one for me too. I noticed that he was very aware of not just what his contribution was, but the people around him. A lot of empathy there. Not very not very self-centered there. A little too cool, right? Very calm, yeah, grounded, right? Perfect. I love your examples there. Now, the next one's going to be a little different, and
Mommy's gonna sing you.
I'm going to pause it. I want to show you this one because this also shows a difference between emotional intelligence just being your reaction to your own emotions, but how you might be impacted by others' emotions in the same room as you. And you might have seen this video. It's a really good one. But pay attention to what's going on here, and we'll talk about it a little bit later.
Sing you a song? You want me to sing a song, honey? Let me know how you feel about the song, okay? I don't want you to come round here no more. I beg you for mercy. You don't know how strong my weakness is, or how much it hurts me. 'Cause when you say it's all you crying, monkey? Okay, mommy's done. Okay, it's just a song. It's just a song, honey.
So, how many of you felt a little teary-eyed at watching that?
Yeah, bingo.
Uh, yeah. So it's it's weird, right? Emotions can have an impact on people in the same room as you, and babies, if, for example, on this one, are very tied to their mothers. And the thing I really liked about that video and what it demonstrated was that it wasn't a baby crying for the normal reasons of I'm hungry or I'm sad or not sad, I'm angry or need a diaper change. It was really an emotional kind of cry, some kind of connection there, right? So that's another big part of EQ that we'll talk about, how emotions around you can affect you and how that impacts what you do. And then I have one more video I want to show you. And this is probably going to be the most drastic one, but this is where it can really harm you if your EQ is not under control or managed well. So the background on this video is you're going to see a Chinese official who's been stuck in an airport for 2 days now. He's missed his flight twice. This is the second time he's going to miss it. And you're going to see how he reacts to that. And maybe some of you can relate to the airport problems we've been having lately here in the US too. So see how he handles it compared to how you might handle it in that situation. Oh, he's not done. He's going to keep going. Yep, here's the sign and the window. All right, that's probably enough. You get the point. But yeah, so how might this kind of reaction affect your career if you were to be under a lot of stress or pressure and blow up like that? Could it be game ending? Probably, right? Think think he might have a reputation after that? Very much, right? So I don't know, Dan, if there's anything else you want to talk about with those, I'll go ahead and get us moving
I
on
think
to the
we'll
next.
refer back to them as appropriate. I think
Sure.
everybody's got them in their top mind awareness now.
I bet it's worked for him before. That's a funny point. All right, so now we're going to talk about what actual emotional intelligence is, so you can kind of see how this all fits in the framework.
So I've highlighted the key words here in red for obvious reasons. We really have to start by recognizing what our emotions are and the power that they have, as we saw in those videos. We have to understand them, and then we have to use them. And if we don't do any of those things, we're not going to be as effective as we can be. And that's why in the end, it's the ability to effectively manage it, because we're all going to have them. And so we have to be able to optimize how we deal with them. There's 5 elements. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the self-awareness in a minute. Self-regulation kind of speaks for itself, that once you understand it, what your emotions are, you have to be able to manage them. You have to be able to redirect them so that you don't put yourself in a position of, say, the gentleman at the end of that video. Motivation. And I'll talk about that a little later with an example, but it's having the word itself speaks volumes about what it means, but it's working for something beyond money or status, and that comes from within. Empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And once you have all of that, social skills, which is not being the fun guy or fun woman at the water cooler, it's building relationships and having networks.
So a little bit of interaction here I want to get are who are some leaders that you admire and why? Because I think you'll start to see some of the traits that they might have and how related they are to EQ. So I put some of mine in here. Got Bill Gates and Nelson Mandela and Oprah and the Queen. But look at all these people and think about those 5 things that Dan just talked about. They all have that great self-awareness. They all have they have a great control of that awareness, and they don't blow up. They've gone through hardships and they haven't had those times where they just blow up on camera or do something that gets them on publicity news or anything like that. They're very calm and collected. They're very motivated. They've done amazing things, and they have a great sense of empathy and social skills. And then as well, you can see this in some of the characters maybe on some of your favorite TV shows, and maybe that's why you like them. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of start with some of those people there, see to show you kind of why we're attracted to certain people. And a lot of it has to do with their emotional intelligence.
It looks like Trisha is
Trisha
Captain
got it.
Reynolds.
All right, go ahead, Michelle. She's going to teach us a little bit about the self-awareness part.
Sure. So we'll spend a couple minutes on element 1, self-awareness, that Dan talked about. And the descriptors within this element are pretty much what appeared on your quiz, which we'll go over momentarily and score. And it's things like being able to articulate your feelings accurately and express the needs driven from those feelings, knowing what your strengths and limitations are and acting accordingly, times when you use humor to diffuse emotionally charged situations, recognizing complex contradictions of certain emotions, love versus hate, things like that. So we'll go through those in a minute, but that's just kind of an overview. So if you haven't already done the quiz, go ahead and take a minute to do it now. There's an example of the quiz on the slide. And I'll go through, and I want to, while you're doing that, I'll take a minute and kind of from the department of what not to do, I'll share a story of something that happened to me before I had the realization that I needed to do some work on my personal EQ, which is the buzzword for emotional intelligence. So during, I was leading a meeting. This was way back, I was in my late 20s. I was leading a meeting with a small team of engineers at a tech company. And it was supposed to be kind of a final agreement stamp of approval meeting with this team. I was filling in for a project manager, and there were no surprises expected, no schedule changes going to happen. It was just, rubber stamp, let's move on. So I was supposed to disseminate some info, get everybody to nod their heads, and be on my way. But there was a technical issue that came up during the meeting and threw a wrench into everything. So they probably explained it to me adequately, gave me good reasons why that was happening, what the impact would be, but I heard none of it because I was so focused on these emotions that popped up. Everything else, took a back seat. So what was going through my mind was initially concern that the delay was going to affect other teams and reflect poorly on me. There was panic that I was letting the project manager down. There was fear that I was going to lose my cool, which of course came rapidly afterwards. And for me, losing my cool is not the Chinese guy throwing things around at the airport. It comes out in the form of tears. So then there was embarrassment when the tears began to fall, of course. And after that, there was shame that I was letting down women everywhere because I was crying in a meeting. So all that was happening and nothing productive was coming from it. Everything I should have been focused on took a back seat. The impact of the schedule, the ability to problem solve or map out alternate plans, etc. So, on one hand, it's like, okay, it was only a 10-minute experience, no big deal. But unfortunately, that experience followed me for a while. And the reputation as, oh, that chick who cried in the meeting last year lingered. So that is not the result that I was looking for when I was trying to make a name for myself in this new arena that I was in. But so I've learned a lot since then, and I know what my triggers are, and I've figured out different calming techniques to use and habits that enable me to manage those emotions more effectively, so that the emotions aren't in charge of my actions like they used to be. So here's the takeaway is that I am human, and so those emotions are still gonna pop up. I'm still going to experience those, but the difference is that now I can manage them more effectively. I don't react to them. I can respond to them, and then I can put them in the back seat if I need to sometimes, and then deal with that stuff later and be focused on whatever productive needs to happen in order to solve whatever's come up. So that's, like I said, from the Department of What Not to Do, and what I've learned since then. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll start doing some scoring on your exercise. Does everyone have that? Can I move on? Are we good? You can go ahead and type into the chat and let me know. And it looks like Bryce put in the link for the quiz in case you didn't have it. And before I go through the scoring, I want to commend you for taking it in the first place, because the simple acknowledgement that you're here and that you realize, hey, I might have some gaps in this area, and that puts you, the development for that can happen much more easily, and it puts you head and shoulders above many other people that I've worked with in the past. So just by taking the quiz, you've likely already enhanced your self-awareness or had some aha moments. Did anyone have an aha moment as they were going through and doing that? You can type that into the chat if so. So while you do that, you can, the graphic that's up on the screen right now is an abbreviated form of your quiz. And so you can see that you'll go through and on your worksheet on the quiz, just tally up how many questions you answered in each column. And then on this graphic at the top, it tells you how many points each column is worth. And then add it up across. I'm looking at the chat. Joe, balanced lifestyle is a component. We were added that one in there as a just for you to kind of acknowledge, and so we can learn from you personally about that. But it's not technically in the emotional intelligence bucket. It's not a piece. So that's a good point. Okay, so let's go ahead. Bryce has some data to put up on the screen.
Yep.
If you scored 30 points or more, then in this particular aspect or element of emotional intelligence, you've got a really good handle on it, and you're probably ready to move on to look at the 4 other elements within EQ. And if you scored between 18 and 29 points, you've got a strong foundation, which puts you in a good position to develop it further. And then if you scored below 18, then this is an area that you want to focus on more before moving on to look at the other 4 elements.
Yeah.
I'm looking back at the chat here. Jessica says question asked, 8 was a bit confusing to me. I recognize and understand the complex contradictions of emotions. Dan, you might have further input on that one about the love-hate example.
No.
And if you don't, okay. It's just we're looking to see if you, when you're in a sticky situation and someone might be experiencing a duel within the same emotional realm, that gets a little more complex. So if you have a recognition and understanding that exists, that's what we're looking for.
Oh, okay. I think that'll help. I love that everyone's sharing their numbers.
Yeah.
I'll show you my complete scores later on to embarrass myself later, but but this is good. Most of you are doing really well.
Nice. Okay, so if I'm good with that unless there's any other questions, and Dan will
That's
continue
great.
with the other 4 elements.
So yeah, the second one is self-regulation. And does anyone have any idea why I put the Hulk on this slide? I thought he basically represents self-regulation very visually. And although it's just one emotion with anger, We can all be like Hulk sometimes with all kinds of emotions. So here's kind of the different points that go along with that. You can see just from like that Chinese example, if you fail to regulate on your emotions, it can be very hard to stay focused or composed. Uh, and a good way to kind of gauge where you're at is to see how long it takes you to calm down after something good, like in the Richard Sherman video, or something bad happens, like in that Chinese official video. And another way is also to just think about how it's impacting your decision abilities. So a good example I have here that I always think of is those grocery stores that you go to and you're at the checkout line. They have all those magazines and candy bars and what's it's and they're basically called impulse buys. So a lot of that self-regulation goes into there. Even though you might be a little hungry, you don't want to spend $1 on a candy bar you could get for 50 cents, for example, or something like that. But that's what self-regulation kind of goes into, and that's probably the most recognized part of emotional intelligence.
Motivation. The way that I learn personally and the way that I try to teach are through stories and anecdotes. You can read the words that are there, and we talked about it a little bit at the beginning about motivation. But I'm going to tell you a story about my next door neighbors at one time. Married with 3 children, and the woman, after the third child, had a lot of difficulty losing that baby weight. And eventually her husband got displeased with her, and eventually her husband left her for someone else. So she used her motivation and channeled it towards something positive. And in the end, lost 40 or 50 pounds, and she met a different guy, and she's a very happy person right now. So I know that you women out there, there's not really anyone who would be interested in revenge in a situation like that, but this is the positive use in EQ of motivation to do something constructive that moved her life forward. Instead of being bitter and focusing it internally, she used it externally and improved her life. Empathy. I have another story on empathy, and it relates to my daughter. And my daughter was in a new position and had a new supervisor who had the reputation of being a very gracious woman. But in the interactions with my daughter, she was very sharp, she was brittle, and my daughter thought she was doing a good job, but it wasn't being perceived that way. And so finally, she talked to me about it and asked what she should do differently. And my only suggestion was try to see this from her point of view. It may not be about you. It may not be about you. It may be about her. Subsequently found out that she lived with her ill mother and who was basically dying. And eventually her mother did pass away. And after that all was settled, the supervisor came back to be the person that she had been before. So the point of the story is obviously sometimes these things, when they happen, they're not about you. And if you're able to look at it from the other person's point of view, you may diminish some of these problems and not overreact. Social skills. As I'd said earlier, social skills is not just being the friendliest person in the room. It's a very positive, constructive approach where you are proactive in building relationships and building rapport with other people and forming these alliances in any kind of office situation. In fact, in any kind of personal situation, having alliances and rapport with other people can only benefit you and make you more effective. The energy is placed on moving things forward and not on unnecessary drama, which some of you may have observed in office situations before.
Yeah, I love the stories they're sharing in the chat. I don't know if you saw one of those come through, Dan. But yeah, if anything has resonated with you on these 5 elements, feel free to share in there. I'd love to see what your strategies are for working on these different areas or what you've seen works well. Or maybe some areas that you recognized from just going over this that you could work on yourself. Yeah. I like Kristen's here. She says, I tend to repress emotions or compromise my own well-being instead of dealing with them in an effective way. That's good. And Shelly's story is really good too. She gives herself one day each week, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 day a week to be angry. Then I specifically agree to spend some mental time on forgiveness. It allows me to feel my feelings, but also not to act drastically in the heat of the moment because I know that I will have to forgive. Great feedback, guys. Thank you. So this is a question you all can answer here too. How does emotional intelligence affect you? And while you're typing that, Dan will talk a little bit about the brain side of it.
Now, any presentation where you get to use the word amygdala has got to be a useful presentation. But the point of this is to show you that due to how we've been created as human beings, there is a physical reason why we have these reactions. And normally, as you can see from the top, everything goes up through the sensory cortex, and that's how we manage things on an ongoing basis. But when there is stress, or whether there's an attack, or whether there's some kind of a reaction, we take the short route, and that's when we have the emotional response. So there's a physical reason why these things happen. It's not just, gee, I'm feeling stressed today. There is something in our biological history that causes this. So we're going to show you some pictures, not very long, not very many, and we're going to ask you a couple of questions at the end to see if you want to respond through the chat. But just to give you an opportunity to just see how do you feel when you see these pictures. So if anybody would like to comment through the chat, it'd be interesting if you did have an emotional reaction. If we'd lingered on some of them, it might have had a better opportunity to do that, but in the essence of time, we wanted to give you a flash.
Overwhelming sadness, yeah. Sick, yeah. The one that freaks me out is that one with the babies.
I know we specifically showed that the shortest amount of time because that's the one that bothers me the most as well.
Instant stress on traffic, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Dan, do you have any feedback on why some people respond more to the negative ones than the positive ones?
They're the ones that get through to us the quickest.
Yeah. I love that everyone's being so specific too in their descriptions. It's not just good or bad, it's peaceful or happy or sadness or horrified or protective. These are really good examples. Really good.
So you can see on the side here and reinforce the point that emotions do have a physical manifestation. This is the work of these researchers on these volunteers that show that there is an image that's created for each. We don't have to dwell on the differences, but I'm trying to continue to make the point that there are physical reasons why we have these, and so it's something that we have to be prepared to deal with as human beings.
So now we're going to talk about how you can improve your emotional intelligence.
So everyone is different. We're all unique, and we all have our own triggers, things that set us off. Maybe we can show a couple, and then maybe you can comment on what any that you think are unique to you.
Yeah, go ahead and share any triggers you have in the chat, and we'll share some of ours because this is what Michelle, Dan, and I kind of came up with on our end of what triggers us. The first one, this is one that bothers me a lot. Drop everything right now and do what I want. So maybe you've had that.
Like when someone's talking to you, saying that to you.
Yeah, totally.
Correct.
Exactly. Lack of understanding or clarity on an issue. Perception that I'm not meeting expectations. Yeah. Traffic and unexpected delays. Some of you have already seen how that affects you. Excessive follow-ups. Being interrupted. Those are all some of ours. Everyone in chat's been sharing some good ones too.
Hmm.
Yeah, Jessica is helpless, unable to affect change. Yeah, that's a really important one. Micromanagement, that comes up a ton of times and probably triggers people. It would be good to know, right? Luis has a good one about seeing injustice and unfairness and um, not having much you can do about it sometimes. Oh, gall, yeah. Inflicting chemicals on you, like smoke, exactly. Yeah, great responses. A few more coming in here. Yeah, another one I didn't even put up here yet was bullying. You get that a lot. Cool.
Okay, here's another situation that you can think about on how you might react if you were put into that situation. Again, keeping with my behavior of telling a story, this similar actually happened to me. Someone that I knew set up a meeting with me for a prospective job with someone else, another person. So there were three of us going to meet, person who organized it and the person that I was being interviewed by. And I had 90 minutes, presentation, a conversation, and then a lunch. And when I got to the circumstance, to the situation at the company, the person I was supposed to see, his day had become chaotic, and that person only could give me 15 minutes. So I had to summarize, I had to abbreviate, I had to discuss what I had to do in a very short period of time. And I did it, I think, in a pretty calm and cool way. Unfortunately, I didn't get that position. But the person who I had set it up, the person who watched me through this for the 15 minutes, that person ended up hiring me. So I think if I had shown fear or frustration or anger or disappointment or whatever, I would have lost both gigs. And in the end, I got a good one through keeping my emotions in check and being as professional as I could under the circumstances.
Yeah, so if you walked through that kind of scenario, would you have maybe felt some of these emotions, fear, anger, frustration? And then how do you optimally handle a situation like that? That's a great example of how to kind of see how your emotional intelligence would work through something like that. Another really common scenario that people have are with their bosses. Just one thing they might do is publicly berating you in front of others as a way to drive more productivity. How many of you have had bosses that lack either self-awareness, that they are basically demotivating people instead of motivating them, or are not able to self-regulate? Or if you're a boss, that's another, this is why it could be important too. Yes, unfortunately, more than a few. Sorry, Michelle. I'm Michelle's boss, so that must be me.
No, it was long ago.
No, I'm joking. Sheila, yes, yes. Yeah, it's a very common thing. Why do you think it is so common? Yeah, been there too many times, Robin. Yeah, sorry about that. Maybe we need to get our bosses on a follow-up webinar here. But yeah, so when that happens, and I've been in those situations before, it kind of makes you close up. That's how I feel actually when I'm in those situations. I kind of just want to curl into a ball and just be like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and feel awful. But it could be fear. You could feel anger, frustration, resentment. There's a lot of things with that. And then the other part of it is how do you stay productive? And even if these kind of situations come up, if you have a strong enough EQ, you can recognize what is coming across to you and still turn it into something positive. And that's what's really important about kind of learning how to deal with these situations you don't want to usually be in.
Okay, so we know that people have a lot of talent and they have a lot of capability, and I'm going to give that as a grant to everybody. But if you don't have good EQ, that can just submarine it all. And again, with a story, I worked for an executive at IBM, brilliant, young, articulate, well-educated, charismatic, no self-regulation, and eventually lost his position. And he took that baggage with him to other companies, and the same result happened because he was never able to regulate his emotions. And he would behave outrageously to the point of being physical and throwing things, and not dissimilar from the gentleman at the airport. And so despite all of the other talents that that person had, he ended up not being very successful and never realizing his potential.
So we're coming up on the end of this section, and I just want to ask you now in chat, what do you think increasing your EQ can do for you? Now you're kind of seeing how it all melds together. What's the benefit of it at the end of the road? Go ahead and type in there and I'll share some of the things that we've found. The first one is that it's reducing stress. If you're able to work in these situations that, like the sales call one where you prepared for an hour but you only have 15 minutes to give your presentation, or you're working for a boss that publicly berates you or puts you down. If you can come into these situations with an understanding of how you're feeling and regulating it so that you don't come off as a Chinese official or in those kind of situations, and that you still have that motivation, or maybe even have some empathy for your boss. Maybe you go, oh, he must be under a lot of pressure, and this is why I'm getting this. It's not about who I am as a person. Don't let it be personal. It can really affect how well your career can go from there. Another big one is engagement. Having that motivation, that part of EQ in there, really will help you with engagement, even when maybe your job isn't going as smoothly as you like. You're going to have more job satisfaction. You're going to have more productivity. Your collaboration, you're going to have those social skills to work with other people. You're going to have the empathy to relate to them. You're going to understand their emotions when they're going through stressful situations. You can maybe even help them with that when they're going through extra stress or pressure. And you're going to be able to take all of the facts and your emotions and the feelings and make good decisions based on that. And another big one is that when you look at this as a whole picture, it's really going to benefit the organization. And there's been lots of research showing how EQ improves ROI. So Michelle, you might have been paying attention to the chat more. Is there any examples from the chat that were good?
Well, I just glanced back at it and I saw Shelley's comment that says higher EQ makes you more pleasant to be around, so you can affect change in peers and all coworkers. And I fully agree, mostly because of peers, because we don't suffer. I mean, we drink our own Kool-Aid at work, so our work environment is typically not problematic. But outside of work, I find the same thing, that because I can more objectively assess what's going on around me, then I bring a calm to others and then help them see things more objectively when they might react. When we're in a grocery store line and someone cuts, and my whoever I'm there with starts having a cow about it, I can kind of point out, well, I heard her on the phone and her mother just died, or whatever. I can be more open to the exterior occurrences instead of making it all about us. And did you see someone just cut in front of us? So
Yeah, that's a great example. Thanks for sharing these.
Okay, so there's obviously, as part of the ongoing process, there's lots of tips that can be used, but we wanted to tease you with one for each of them. Under self-awareness, what's always worked for me and other people that I've seen that have been effective is don't be afraid to laugh at your own expense. Self-deprecation is a very effective destabilizer in other situations. Self-regulation. If I had done it in my own sphere, in my own time frame, what I used to do when I worked at IBM back in the day is what I would feel, like Shelley said earlier, in the heat of the moment. I would send an inter-office memo to myself, which means it would take a day to get back to me. And I wanted to see if I was still feeling the same way before I overreacted. It gave me pause. It's kind of silly to think about it with an email because obviously you get the email instantaneously, but it's the equivalent of just counting to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let other people's negativity affect you. You know, you are who you are. Be your own silo. Try to stay away from the drama. Stay positive. Put yourself in the other person's shoes, as I said about the story with my daughter and her supervisor. It isn't always only about you. It's about someone else sometimes. Think about that. And you know, you're going to build relationships and do the proper networking when you look for common ground. Look for those overlapping concentric circles. Find the things where you and someone else or a group of people agree, and focus on those things. You'll be a lot more effective. So, we're all human beings. We all have emotional reactions to situations that affect us. There are physical realities that cause these reactions. So, we know these are going to happen. So, recognize, understand your triggers, manage your reactions, and use these emotions to your own advantage. It can be done.
So you've kind of gotten a feel for how important emotional intelligence is. So the next real step is how do you make sure that you don't limit your career, that you understand where yours is at. So we have a tool here,
So,
and Michelle's going to talk a little bit more about it.
right, what the tool that we use is an EQ assessment, and it is a private online assessment that you take. It takes about 20 minutes, gives you immediate results in a 10 plus page report. So what that report gives you is a customized analysis that highlights your gaps, where your gaps might be in the 5 elements of emotional intelligence. And it also comes with personalized advice for developing your EQ further. And it will reveal where you fall in those areas compared to the general population. And then it also provides insight on how you might appear to others when you're under stress and pressure. So really valuable stuff. It's a tool we use in a lot of stuff that we do with our clients. So what we are offering today is a look at Bryce's EQ assessment. He'll show you a couple samples.
Yeah, and the reason why I want to show you this is because one of you is actually going to get not just an assessment, but the coaching session that goes along with it, just for being on this webinar. So I just want to show you quickly what goes into these assessments. So you're going to get a great overview of emotional intelligence and how it's broken down. And if you continue on, you're going to see where you score compared to the 68% of the population. And so you can see quickly where you can improve. So I'm not very good at social skills or self-awareness, but I'm okay at self-regulation and some of the other ones. Then if you keep looking, it will break them down into those different buckets as well. It's kind of the same thing there. But this is a really good page that you'll have where it gives you specific detailed information targeted to how you answer the assessment. And I found it very accurate, very helpful for how I can do better there. And then on top of that, it's going to give you even more detail on each individual section of your EQ, with lots of advice on how you can do better, or what you're doing currently and how you can kind of change things around. So it's going through all those. And then at the end, it's going to also kind of visualize it in a wheel so you can quickly see how you score, where you're weak, all that.
Great. So, of course, my dog picks this moment to start going crazy, so I apologize if that noise carries over. So today we have an offer for you, including your own EQ assessment and a 60-minute coaching session to help you go through it and take things to the next step, to the next level. Because the report is fairly easy to understand and intuitive, but the time with the coach will give you opportunities to focus on your specific situation and what questions you might have from what's in the report compared to your current work environment, things like that. So we normally, you can see in our store online at Careertopia, it's normally a $200 package, but the first 9 buyers today will get it for $150. That's 25% discount. And then as Bryce mentioned, we have a giveaway. But one thing I want to say before I turn it over to him kind of ties in with what a comment Louise made on the chat a little while ago that said, when we asked what does emotional intelligence mean to you, and she said, I trust more and feel safer with someone who is self-aware and balanced in a natural way. And I agree, because as I've done this development work, I definitely see how I impact others that way, and it has enhanced things, not just at work, but my personal life. I'm a better parent as a result of it. We had a little issue this morning where those skills came in handy on the way to school. But anyway, and I was also just telling Trisha on chat, I wish I had known this 20 years ago. I came to Careertopia when I was 42, and that was, now I'm older than that. But if they don't teach this in school, and I wish I had known it. I look back, I've made so many mistakes, and at a minimum, this package is kind of how to not shoot yourself in the foot career-wise. But beyond that, it's how to connect with people and advance your interpersonal relations. It's really valuable. So that's the info. If you have any questions, we'll go to Q&A shortly.
Yeah,
But
you're going to see something here. Just to make it easy for you, I'm going to put a link to it as well if you want to come back to it later. But you're also going to see it just open up on your browser here in a second. I don't know if this works this way or not, but I'll put it in the chat as well. But yeah, so you can find it here under products and services, EQ assessment consultation. All right. The other thing that we want to say is that we have a guarantee on everything that we do. If you don't learn anything from your report, you don't feel like you got the full satisfaction from it, if your coaching that went along with it wasn't really giving you any new insights or what you expected, feel free to let us know and we'll give you all your money back for that as well. So now for the fun part.
So I think I mentioned earlier that I'm Canadian, so we're going to ask a Canadian question. And since I'm from the province of Quebec originally, it's a question that relates to the province of Quebec, and the question is?
Yeah, so whoever answers this question first is going to be the winner for this assessment and coaching package. So be ready. Type it in the chat. What is the capital city for the province of Quebec? Oh, yeah, I was wondering if people would say that.
Brian is correct.
Quebec City? Awesome. So we just want to close with any of your questions. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know in the chat. If you have a webcam, we could even pull you up and do a live question. Let me know if you're comfortable with that. Yeah, you might be good. Cool. Well, if we don't have any questions, then we will let everyone go. if there are questions, we'll stay around for whoever has questions still. Brian, we'll send you
How do we connect with Brian to make sure he gets his?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brian, I'm going to put my email in here and go ahead and send me an email. And this is all done online, so we can connect and get you the assessment there. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Robin. Yeah, very good interaction by everyone here. I really appreciated it. Cool. Yeah, so yeah, Jessica, send me an email I have my email there in the chat. I'll gladly send you the slides. We'll make the recording available as well. Yeah, this will be really helpful for a job hunt.
Yeah, Shelly, there was, if you're still here, Bryce had a scenario a couple years back where he was being recruited and he shared his assessment with the person who was hiring. And not that he was trying to get another job, but they were very impressed with the content and that he was like that self-aware and was interested in learning more about himself in those areas. And it really served him well. He didn't take the offer, but it was a good one.
Yeah. No, it's true. These reports are really good for helping in a job search the people you're going to be working with understand you better. Not just the EQ ones, the other ones we have on the site as well. Yeah. No, that'll be good for you too, Brian. Talk about good timing. All right, Luis had a question here. Can you talk a bit about the question about the complex contradictions of emotions? Did you hear that one, Dan?
I did, but I don't understand it. Is that back to the survey that was done earlier?
Oh, okay, from the original survey. So let me see if I can pull that up. Or Michelle might have that. I know she's helping someone else right now too. Michelle, do you know the question on the original survey for the self-awareness
Yes, it
about
was
contradiction?
question number 8 says, I recognize and understand the complex contradictions of emotions. So from my, and I'm not certified in AQ, but I've done quite a bit of research and prep on it. And what they're referring to there is the fact that emotions are quite complex. It's not always a simplistic answer, and the situation, it might be something, a deep issue going on that relates to those, that you might have what seems like contradictory emotions going on at the same time in response as a trigger to something. And not that you would be able to analyze all that at the moment it happens, but just the awareness that you can have that complexity is powerful. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Good. Yeah, and Lori's
And
chiming in. She might have some good input on that one too.
okay. And I can probably, I can't do it at the moment, but I can probably do a little bit of research and get back with, it was Louise asking. Yeah, and point her to some resources.
Yeah.
Here, I'm pasting some of these comments for follow-up.
Yeah. Yeah, so Luis just commented back on that too, Michelle.
Yep, I agree. So that would, having that awareness that kind of trickiness exists takes you from a what just happened to, oh, this might be some of that, even though you might not be able to analyze what exactly it just happened, just knowing that, oh, it goes in that bucket, and I'm not I'm not completely ignorant about what's going on here as you're going through the fray.
Yeah.
I think Laurie kind of nailed it.
Yeah, Lori's example is perfect.
Oh, I missed it. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Great.
great. Awesome. Well, thanks to everyone for being on this webinar. It was really fun. We look forward to doing the next one probably in a couple months, and we'll make sure to send all the recording out to everyone too.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you guys later.